Welcome to the settlement. I'm Fern, and today we're going to be taking a tour of the Chorusseum. Before we get into that, just a general kind of what's going to happen in the channel. So next video will be the Smog Singer's Dark Bestiary. I've moved that behind this one, mostly because I usually like to do the gear sections first before doing the creatures, the monsters. Didn't do that with Crimson Crocodile because I like the Crimson Crocodile that much, so that'll be coming a bit later this month. So let's talk about the gear. Before we get there though, as always, if you like these, the best way to support them is via Patreon or channel membership. Not that there's really much benefits for that. Likes, comments, subscribes, all those are also very much appreciated. I only do these videos because of the support I get via Patreon though. YouTube, small channel, not particularly... it doesn't really cover the costs of doing these. It actually doesn't cover them at all. So anyway, regardless, welcome. We're going to talk about the Chorusseum, which before we get into it, I gotta say this is another one of those like absolutely fantastic names. Really love it. A portmanteau of chorus and Colosseum. Shove them together, you get Chorusseum. It's a great sounding word. It's unlocked when you defeat the Smog Singers for the first time, and because the Smog Singers are Kingdom Death's mermaids, this has that whole musical siren alluring type of aesthetic to it, and that's the main thrust of this. Is everything focuses around music, playing instruments. Even the outfit has a lot of references to that. Before we get into it, there is one thing we do have to talk about, which is that just about every single one of these pieces of gear, not all of them, but most of them, especially the weapons, has the noisy keyword. I try not to talk about noisy every time it comes up, although I do have to reference it occasionally. It's a big one to talk about here, so let's do the noisy talk, and that way I don't have to point at each one and go, it's got noisy, so I don't recommend you use it, blah blah blah, because saying that every single time will be a waste of time and effort. So let's talk about noisy, shall we? Basic principles. Noisy is a keyword. Keywords come in a few different types. They're always descriptive of what the particular piece of gear is or does or what it's made of. They can be categories, so weapon, item, armor, thus like categorizing. They're three distinct mechanical types with their own rules defined by the keyword. They can be, if they're weapons, melee or ranged. Again, that's unique within what they do, like melee weapons are often explicitly called by the monster movement abilities of armor sets, and ranged weapons rarely ever are. Then you've got weapon types on weapons, and then you've got descriptive things and material things. So for example, the material, the singing boots, all of the singing armor is made of flesh. Flesh is just a descriptive material. It doesn't currently have any mechanical properties because we don't have any outfits with flesh. But if we had an outfit card with flesh, that would suddenly come into play. Noisy is one of the more problematic keywords in the game. Let's not beat around the bush. It's the most problematic keyword in the game. But it belongs to this category of keywords with negatives. And a lot of the negatives, you can kind of ride them. You just accept the risk. For example, if an item is fragile, then or a piece of armor, actually, there is a fragile armor card. But if a gear card is fragile, then you shouldn't take it against the Smog Singers because their vibration damage can destroy fragile things. But also, you know it might break on the hunt, or maybe during the showdown. There's a chance. You know it's fragile. You've been warned. You take the risk of that possibly getting archived. Nothing you can do about it. So you kind of plan your build around being like, if this thing breaks, I'm still okay, but hopefully it doesn't. Then we've also got soluble. Monster grease, for example, is soluble. Again, there's situations under which it can get washed away or evaporated. A classic would be the Sunstalker, that I think it's every 3 rounds the cycle is, but eventually it reaches like a solar flare, and any soluble stuff is just evaporated if you get hit by it. So that's another minor negative keyword. More severe is heavy. heavy has positives under certain circumstances, but also it can be a major negative. It's a huge limitation for people of the sun. It's also one of the major reasons that cracks in the ground, the settlement event, can be quite painful. Noisy, which is almost always paired with instruments, unless you've got coprolalia, that Tourette's, on your survivor. So that's one sort of aspect, is these generally come hand in hand. Pretty much always noisy has instruments with it. Instrument almost always has noisy attached to it. So the reason noisy is such a large problem is because the punishment for it is incredibly severe. It is specifically this Hunt Event 10, the Harvester, which in simple version, like coverage, has Kingdom Death's version of the Shire-Halud, the sandworm from Dune, turn up and cause a lot of problems. It's drawn by the footsteps. The very first line is a big part of why this is such a problematic thing, though. It says this event cannot be re-rolled or avoided in any way. If you get a 10, you get a 10, tough luck. The ground quakes and cracks beneath the survivors. A colossal worm bursts from below. Its skin a mosaic of screaming faces. The mere sight of it is maddening. That's this. Whoop, I turned the page. That's this here. All survivors gain one random disorder and must spend one survival or be devoured whole. Pretty scary, but that's why we try and make sure we always have survival on the hunt, because there are things like this. If any survivor has noisy gear, the Harvester is drawn to the sound and they are instantly devoured. Nothing can save them. The creature is so horrifying that the survivor's brains erase the experience from their memories, do not gain the benefits of your death principle. Right, so this means anytime you draw a basic hunt card or you're asked to roll on the basic hunt table, you have a 1% chance of the Harvester turning up, which is small, but when you add it up over the length of the entire campaign, on average every settlement encounters the Harvester at least once. That's kind of the averages on it. Now, if it was like fragile or soluble, things would be a little bit easier, because that would just destroy the gear card. The problem here is that the gear card isn't destroyed, which I will say I always find a bit weird, but the survivor is just gone. They're dead, and you get no benefits from it. And I guess eventually the Harvester excretes all of the equipment and the Scout picks it up, because that's the only explanation of why the gear also isn't archived along with the survivor, because nobody remembers what's happened to the survivor. I've never really seriously criticised this one on a thematic point, but the thematic mechanics of the Harvester are ass. They're terrible. The thematics are really not great at all. Obviously, this is a sandworm reference like Dune, but what do people in Dune do to deal with these things? They make thumpers, which make noise and draw the sandworms away while they're working with their harvesters. Can't you tell I've played a lot of Dune Imperium? And I did enjoy the 2 Dune movies so far. Anyway, the whole point being, they've worked out a system to distract them away, which is great. But also, it doesn't really matter if a harvester gets eaten in the world of Dune, because people are incredibly disposable in that world. Not here. So, all of that said, the issue here is Kingdom Death is a game that is balanced around 4v1. Sometimes it might be 4v3 in the case of the Red Witches, or in the case of the Smog Singers, you've got one monster, but it's kind of got 3 limbs, is the way to, all of the Smog Singers are kind of the same thing, but they just have their independent units, even though they sort of work together in concert. So when you get a survivor who dies on the hunt, suddenly you're going into the showdown 3 versus 1, which is a significant drop, because while the hit location dex scales against survivors, if you're attacking, then you get hit back by the hit location deck. If you don't attack it, it isn't able to hurt you. The AI deck, on the other hand, doesn't scale beyond the kind of things that, extra speed, extra damage. Instead, it just outputs what it's outputting, and only occasionally does it have a kind of scaling, which intimidates against all survivors and area effect attacks and synchronetic attacks. That's the rare times that the hit location, the AI deck, actually manages to scale down when there's less survivors. Most of the time it's just outputting the same thing. That in itself means the showdown could be over before you even start it. Really bizarre, weird events, unusual things that happen on the hunt can ruin the showdown from the very beginning and put you in a terrible situation anyway. That's the nature of the hunt table. But very rarely does it do this. And normally it's like Overwhelming Darkness, where you kind of have an idea and you have some tools to mitigate it, which, spending survival, Song of the Brave, etc. There is no mitigation for this at all, and you will lose your survivor. So unfortunately, the only correct answer is do not use gear with noisy. If a survivor gets coprolalia, do not use them on a hunt. They never go hunting quarries. Don't take this gear out. Which is immensely unsatisfying, and one of the reasons I push against the Harvester, and I'm talking about at length here, is because this is bad game design. There's choices I think are questionable in Kingdom Death, because they're like a 1980s mentality of rocks fall and you die. You can mitigate a lot of that. This tells you very firmly, do not take noisy gear on a hunt, or you have a chance of losing that survivor. Yes, it's been clarified you'll only lose one survivor with noisy gear, but that doesn't matter because suddenly you're a unit down as you're going into the showdown. It's just not good. So the correct answer is don't play with noisy gear on hunts. You can use noisy gear on Nemesis fights because they don't have a hunt phase. And if we ever get a new hunt table in the future that doesn't have the Harvester on it, then we may be able to explore instruments and noisy stuff in more depth, because there is a lot of synergies and interesting bits and pieces to put together. But we have what is a reductive piece of design. This is reducing the gameplay area of Kingdom Death. It's making it less than it could be, and that is a shame. Like, this is the single worst piece of design in the entire core game, bar none. I would take the Kingsman over this any day, and I'm always rolling my eyes when fighting that thing, but at least there are counterplays, there's ways to go against it, and it is ultimately fair. This isn't fair, this isn't fun. And the final thing before we move on is, of course, Kingdom Death is billed as a game for 1 to 4 players. Can even have like 5, 6, maybe even 7 players if you were playing with maximum number of survivors plus the scout. That's a lot. But typically there are 4 survivors, and if you're playing 4 players, if somebody gets jobbed on the hunt like this, they're just going to have to sit there for the rest of the hunt and order the showdown. And usually if that happens, the owner of the game tends to be the one who has to hand over their character and say, here, you use my survivor, that's okay, I'll just handle the rules and I'll provide tactical advice and whatever, because that's just being a good host if you're the one running the game. But it doesn't feel good, and it's one of the reasons why often you'll hear people say 1, 2 or 3 players is kind of the optimal number, because if you do lose a survivor, at least there's a backup. You can kind of redistribute, or controlling all the survivors are not so bad. So not only does this harm instruments, this harms the 4-player game space as well. So ultimately, you can think of, whenever I talk about any of these pieces of gear and I say the word noisy, the implicit strategic note here is this gear is not advised for hunts, but you could use it in Nemesis fights. If you do want to use it and you want a house rule, I don't usually talk about house rules, but I'm going to cover a few. First of all, on my Patreon there is a deck version of the hunt events that you can print out. I did it on Make Playing cards, bridge size cards. It's got the bleed areas already on it, and you can just do an order for those, and then you just don't put the Harvester in the deck. That's what I do when playing with friends. I will have a 99 card deck, so they never know. They don't have to worry about it. I don't have to say, don't pick that Whisker Harp, it's noisy, it could be a problem. Instead, I can just be like, yeah, cool, you want to play with instruments? Go for it. The other option is to house rule the Harvester in some way, maybe let a noisy gear be archived to draw the Harvester away from you, like a Thumper from Doom, Oh my god, it's attacking us, throw the Pipa, clang, bang, bong, twang, and the Harvester goes after that. and nobody dies. That's another option for a house rule. Or, as I saw one person do, you could pour Tipex all over the section for the harvester and be like, well, I don't know what a 10 does because the spot is blank. Which is kind of the same as taking out the deck. Ultimately, I hate talking about this, and I'm frustrated that Team Death are so stubbornly clamped onto this as their hill to die on, because it is not a good part of the game. It is a part that makes the rest of the game less. It's a big part. The reason why I'm excited about the Inverted Mountain and I'm excited about the Abyssal Woods is because maybe we'll have a different HUD table. Those harvesters can't burrow up the Inverted Mountain, I hope. Having said that, they probably will now, and there'll probably be an Abyssal Woods version as well. I'm being really caustically sardonic there. Anyway, that's it. That's the noisy bit. Thank you if you did listen. This was my TED talk about reductive game design. Now let's talk about all of the rest of the stuff. Assuming that you can play with it, that you're taking it just in Nemesis fights, or you've house ruled it. I'm going to ignore noisy for the rest of this, and so I can show these cards in the best light possible. Okay, we are going to start with the weapons and items. We'll leave the armor till last. That's over here. I am also going to cover the seed pattern, Hushing Harmonium, and all of the Indomitable gear cards that we have, plus one that doesn't have a attached gear. But before we do that, let's start with the resources, because it's always nice to know what you've got available. These are from most common to least common. We have 4 pink flesh. This is the core hide used for multiple pieces of the armor set. We've got 3 whistle teeth, and 3 fluted bones. Fluted bone, worth noting, you can archive it to play a tune, and on a 5+ you gain any music innovation from the Settlement's innovation deck. I do actually use that ability. Fluted bones run out of use fairly quickly and kind of become generic bones, and it is a boon to be able to get a extra innovation for free. So don't forget that, and I value fluted bones saved in the settlement storage above anything else. And it is it's an 8+, sorry, the font size is tiny. An 8+ is 8, 9, 10, 30%. That's not bad. 30% chance of a music innovation for free. I'd take it. So many of the music innovations are great. Okay, then our 1-offs down, 2-offs, sorry. We have 2 of the, V not tab. We have 2 of the Singing Tongues, 2 Gaseous Bellies, and 2 Delicate Hands. And then our 1-offs down here, Fluted Severed Skull. Like the other kind of skull, it gives insanity gains. We've got the Tail Fat, which you could spend this for +1 understanding if you have Cannibalize. If you're playing the Gambler's Chest with Arc Survivors, I recommend Cannibalize, because it is just a better principle, because it has access to Marrow Eaters, Marrowism, I should say. So that's, Cannibalize has actually become quite good over time. And then 1 set of vocal cords, and probably the grimmest piece of artwork out of the whole lot, although this one's pretty good as well. So yeah, nice mix of different types. And one of the really big things is that if we actually look at down here, the armor set is kind of unusual, because many armor sets have one particular chase resource that there's only one of in the deck, and you need it to be able to build the final piece of the armor set. Examples will be the horns for the Screaming armor set, or the Handed Skull for the Gorman armor set. There's also one specific piece for the Dragon King, which is like the rib cages, and I think there's like one as well with the Psycho Scale armor from the Sunstalker. Like, there's a piece that is a sort of, you're desperately trying to find it. If it doesn't turn up, you can't finish the armor set, which is a bit of a problem, because armor sets, you want to finish them so you get access to your 6th free card that sits outside of the gear grid. We like this card. So not having that, and having all of these be either like, there's 4 of pink fleshes, there's 2 delicate hands, there's 2 gaseous bellies, and the rest generics makes it easier to craft this, although it is worth noting it's a 10 resource armor set, which is very expensive. You'd expect it to be around twice as good as Rawhide. We'll talk about that. But let's get on to our gear cards, shall we? We're going to do them in order. We start with the Hamfluter. So before we go into details, this brings up the main mechanic that a lot of the gear cards is focused around. It's these things called ballads. I'm not going to read from the rulebook because the rulebook wording is kind of unfocused, but they did update it 5 months ago on the Living Glossary, so I'm going to read that instead. It's Ballad X, a gear special rule, spend activation, and archive X cards from the monster's wound stack to perform a ballad. Ballads have different names and costs, denoted by X. Effects of the ballad last until the end of the showdown phase, unless the gear that it features is archived or the survivor performing it dies. Only one ballad may be performed at a time amongst all survivors, unless an effect instructs otherwise. So, with the exception that we're going to get into when talking about the armor set, you will only ever bring one ballad along for the showdown, so you would pick one and that's the one you're going to run. It is worth noting they've tightened this up, but they have missed a little bit, which is if you get disarmed, you get to carry on the ballad. It's not necessarily like a rules break or even a failing thematics. You could think of it as like the instrument gets knocked out of the playing survivor's hands and they just carry the vocal part of it as they run out, maybe clap their hands or something to sort of as a breakdown to try and get back to the instrument. But it is interesting that they left disarm out of there because that's a temporary removal, even though it doesn't leave the gear grid. However, as we just demonstrated, you can just hand wave your way through it. I am literally waving my hands. Anyway, so Hamfluter, first of all, ballad gear cards. It is a weapon, melee, club, instrument, noisy. Club is a reasonable type. It's not super exciting when it comes to its weapon mastery, but it is dependable. It's got 2 speed, 6+ accuracy, and 3 strength. 3 strength is a point below what I think you should have for a node 2 location. Sometimes that is okay though if it has deadly or something like that. I'm going to say the Hamfluter, the strength really is a bit lacking. You need to support that with the survivor. The ballad is the Ballad of Perfection with a total of 7 cards archived. So activate, archive 7 cards from the wound stack, perform it. All survivors increase their perfect hit range by 1. Big fan of that. Very much like perfect hit builds. And the nice thing is you don't have to be using this as your weapon. You just need it in your gear grid. And then, you start playing it separately. So that's a neat part of all of these ballads is they can later on become support gear. They have a longer lifespan than normal weapons, even if they have a not great attack profile. Ballad of Perfection might be worth it if you have perfect hit synergies on all your survivors. Although 7 wounds is a high number. Yeah. The red affinity at the top can be helpful in activating the puzzle ability, which is a red and a blue anywhere on your gear grid. This whistles while you swing. You gain +1 survival and +1 insanity when you attack. You have to be attacking with the Hamfluter. That has been clarified that things like this relate directly to the weapon. It's not you, the survivor. Which is fair enough because this is a really, really good ability. Some of you may even be a little familiar with this mechanic because it is a buffed up version of the fighting art Abyssal Sadist. Abyssal Sadist gives you +1 survival and +1 insanity the first time you wound a monster each attack, which is weaker than get +1 survival and +1 insanity when you attack. That's just the attack trigger. That means that you can surge every turn with a Hamfluter, no problem, it doesn't cost you survival. And even if you're combining with stuff like Rawhide, you might be in a situation where you can net gain survival because Rawhide has that 50% refund. So you could surge, get your refund, and then get the +1 on the Hamfluter. Boom, gains. It's very good, and that's the reason why I'm like, I don't think the 3 strength is a deal breaker. Everything else on this is very solid. It costs a whistle, tooth and a bone. I need to remember to put the crafting costs near the beginning of my breakdown of each gear card. I keep trying and I keep forgetting because I don't have a script. You're just hearing this, like, this is just my thoughts straight out into the microphone, you know, Chorley FM, straight to your ears. Now that's a reference I'm not sure many people will get, and I toned it down. Anyway, let's try and get that right. We're going to go on to the Peace Dagger next. This costs a fluted bone, a tail fat and a hide. It is a weapon melee dagger, instrument noisy. It's got 3 speed, 6+ accuracy and 2 strength. It has an up blue, left green and right red affinity. Not quite the best configurations, but they're okay. You don't look down at free affinities. You know, we don't turn them away. We say thank you for our affinities, so that's great. Also, you're not really going to be attacking with this because the main use for it is the Ballad of Peace. This costs 3, so activate and archive 3 wounds. In the aftermath, if you did not attack this entire showdown, you gain +1 endeavour. That is the Tinker ability, but it can be stacked on top of the Tinker ability, which makes the Peace Dagger very thematically interesting and cool, and also something you can start building around. There's sort of nascent strategies. There's a pure support strategy, which I've done a video on, and that is a kind of survivor who just doesn't attack. They provide their value to the showdown by dealing with terrain and maybe even just blocking the hits and then doing hit location control and or AI control if possible. So the Peace Dagger, you can use it if you're playing support, you can use it if you're playing tank, because activating a shield to get block or deflect or whatever doesn't negate this. So if you have a survivor who's going to go into showdown and is like, I'm not going to attack so I don't have to worry about the hit location deck, I'm going to play my Peace Dagger. That works, and that's super interesting. And also the bonus isn't so big that if you do have to attack, you'd feel bad. Like, it's a nice bonus, but you're not locked out of attacking. You can do it if you want to. So, super interesting little card. And the other sort of, I said nascent and then I didn't follow on from that thought. That is the nascent strategy that's beginning to exist, is the concept of the Squire, which is a survivor who supports another survivor. So everything they do is dedicated towards helping the other survivor maximize things. I haven't done a video on it in roll call because it's not quite there yet. It's like the trappers, trap debilitators who throw out traps to reduce the monster's stats. It's not a full strategy yet, but it's a direction that's slowly being explored. This is a tool for supports and a tool for potential squires. There's another one within this selection as well. We'll get to in a moment, but super interesting that this exists and does have some value and benefit, even if it is a little expensive. But more endeavours can always mean more resources, more population. Okay, next up we've got the Pipa. One of my favourites in this entire thing, mostly because I love the design, I love the miniature that holds the Pipa, and this is just a classic kind of bard lute inspired kind of thing, although Pipa isn't strictly speaking a lute, but it is referred to as the Chinese lute. In case you're not familiar, for a decade, when I lived back in the UK, I was a practitioner of Chao Ga Tong Long, southern style praying mantis. So we had contact with a bunch of these kind of instruments, especially when doing the lion dance every year. So I've held a Pipa, I've played a Pipa, not at all anywhere near well, but I was really happy to see it here. I was like, I know that thing, and this one's a really cool design. So got a lot of love for this, even if it's not the best. Spoilers. So it costs a fluted severed head, pink flesh and an organ. It is a weapon, melee, club, instrument, noisy, so same category as the Hamfluter on that front. It has 2 speed, 6 plus accuracy and 0 strength. However, it has 4 red affinities in all directions, so this is what we call a core gear, because you can put it in the middle slot, the core slot. And if you have 2 of those reds connected, puzzle, you get +4 strength on the weapon, okay? When attacking with the weapon, it's not a super duper monster tooth necklace as much as we'd like it to be. But that makes the Pipa basically a 2, 6 plus 4 strength weapon. As I said, I think 4 is the right number for a club. So this is pretty good on that front. It's around where it should be. It's the right costs. It's nicely done. The Ballad is the Ballad of Savagery. 6, so activate and archive 6 wounds from the stack. All survivors' weapons gain Savage. Really cool, because there's a bunch of weapons that are deadly but don't have Savage, and Savage is at its best when paired with deadly, so you can use this as like the centerpiece for a group of survivors who are wielding deadly weapons, so they'll get to do that extra Savage wound when they score their criticals, which they have a higher chance of doing so. Very, very cool. Just a really solid instrument all over. You're not going to keep it forever, but like I said, you might do, because you could carry this in your gear grid just for the purpose of getting that Savage onto everyone's weapons, because everyone has deadly, so you could even have your own deadly and then the Pipa supporting you. So, good stuff. Okay, next up, at the cost of the Delicate Hand and a Scrap, and you're going to want to make 2 of these, the Razor Cymbals. Weapon, melee, guitar, metal, instrument, noisy. 2 speed, 6 plus accuracy, 4 strength, right on the money. That's what I was talking about. This is what I want to see, is around this ballpark. Up facing red, down facing blue affinities, and it doesn't need them itself. Love to see it. It's paired, as I mentioned, and it has really unique ability. You make attack rolls 1 at a time. For each hit, the monster suffers -1 evasion until the end of this attack, kind of representing the monster being like ringing in the ears slightly as you clap it with a cymbal, smack it with a cymbal, or perhaps even ear clap it with both. Gong gong. So the neat part of that is just on itself. If you hit with the first dice, the next dice hits on a 5+, the next dice hits on a 4+, then a 3+. If you manage to get extra speed, then after that you'll be hitting on 2+, assuming you hit all the way. So it's kind of a snowball weapon. But they worded this really interestingly. It doesn't say for each hit you get +1 accuracy until the end of the attack. It gives the monster -1 evasion until the end of the attack. And one of the things that's always worth remembering is evasion is basically +1 accuracy for everyone in your hunt party. And there are survival opportunities where you may surge. And one of them is before performing reactions or after critical wound effects on hit location cards. So you can attack with the Razor Cymbals as a setup. You get in there, bang, 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 while the monster's reeling and you haven't finished resolving your attack, other survivors can surge and take advantage of the reduced evasion to score hits more easily. So this is a great opener weapon. Honestly, that's kind of it, but it's also a lot. It's a unique space. It's something that isn't on any other kind of weapon, and it encourages you to be paired. It's sometimes paired weapons, they just feel like a punishment, or they feel like, oh, I'm just getting a speed bonus, whatever. This is really cool, because those extra dice, those extra speed points can be extra accuracy for everyone else once you got access to surge. So I really rate the Razor Cymbals. I think they're my favourite of the weapons within this, although it's close, because I really like the Pipa, I like the Hamfluter, I appreciate the Peace Dagger, and I even really like the Spear of Life hidden behind the card here. So there's plenty of decent good weapons within this. So yeah, really like it. Okay, now we have the Energy Drum. This is a gaseous belly and a vocal cords. So the vocal cords a little harder to get your hands on, but nothing else really uses them in the main selection. So you can think about it. It is an item instrument noisy with a left facing blue affinity. It's okay. Yeah, you actually don't care that much about this left-facing blue affinity because of the way the energy drum's designed, but it is there. We don't turn our nose up at it. Activate, spend 1 survival to play this. An adjacent survivor gains an activation which they must spend immediately, limit once per round. Right, so this, when you look at it, you go, oh, this costs me survival, that's a bit awkward. But the actual trick with this is it gives you a second copy of your best attacking weapon. Or even potentially sometimes the ability to get a clutch defensive move up with block or deflect, because basically the energy drum is a copy of whatever gear grid is in that adjacent survivor's gear grid that they could activate. You get to go, hey, here you go, spend a survival, boom, use that weapon again, use that shield, activate that monster meat, whatever there is there, you know, you can do it. And honestly, at this stage of the campaign, if you're lucky enough to get a Zambato, having a second copy of the Zambato in the form of an energy drum is worth that survival as long as you've got decent survival pool. So this weapon, this item, see, I want to call it a weapon because that's how I often use it. This item is just really deep in what it can do, and it just gets better as you go on and on and on, especially if you have ways of regaining survival, rawhide for, you know, in combination with other things for kind of maintaining your overall survival level, or directly actually replenishing it with survival tokens from survivalism. Just a really good item card that I always have a fun time using it. And that is because it is a second copy of your best weapon or your best shield or your best item card. And that is super sweet and it's worth the cost. So this might be my favourite. Okay, then for the cost of the Singing Tongue, a Whistle Tooth and a Scrap, we have the Harpy Harp, which is another absolute banger of a name. Item, instrument noisy. It has a left-facing green and a down-facing red. You need to connect both of those to activate its puzzle affinity ability. Its normal ability is you ignore overwhelming darkness. And then its puzzle ability, your noisy weapons gain +1 strength for each instrument in your gear grid. So there's another card after this that combos with this, which we'll talk about that in full in the combo after looking at the Singing Heart. But by itself, this is a really cool build around, with obvious exception of you don't take it on the hunt, so you don't use the overwhelming darkness ability, you don't care about it. But in a different world, the one we're talking about these in, this is just amazing fun. You can pick any kind of weapon that has a really neat ability and stick a load of like instruments onto your gear grid and take advantage of that. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The Singing Heart works in combination with it. Let's get to that in a moment. So basically, I really like this as a strength booster. It's really nice in support of the overall bard build, the one-man band, because you're going to want other instruments in your gear grid. At a minimum, you'll have 3, and you could run even more if you have a survivor who doesn't need armor for protection, such as Marrowism survivors or Crystal Skin. Very exciting and fun. It's nice to see these build-arounds living in a world where there are no killjoy, anti-fun harvesters. So we'll carry on the conversation on that in a moment on the weapon section. This is the Singing Harp. Singing Heart, sorry. It's another great name because it's Singing Harp, Singing Heart. It costs a Singing Tongue, a Whistle Tooth and a Scrap. No, that's the Harpy Harp. It's a Singing Tongue, a Bone and a Scrap. Sorry, it's very similar. You could craft it with a Whistle Tooth because, you know. And it's an item, Lantern, instrument noisy. So Lantern, that's kind of relevant if you're playing the late stages of People of the Lantern. You need lanterns. This is a lantern with some other abilities. It has a left-facing arrow, which is one of my favourite mechanics in the game. I love the positional puzzle of the gear grid. I love cards that do this, that say, hey, put this card next to this card in a certain orientation and get a bonus. So, really happy to see that. It says the weapon to the left gains noisy and +1 accuracy. And if you have a red, a green and a blue affinity in your gear grid, you may archive this to smash it, creating a vexing wave of white noise. Discard all moves in play, the monster is dazed. Dazed is -1 speed on its next round. Ultimately, I think the affinity ability is kind of garbage. I think if it just returned itself to settlement storage, you know, like you'd smash it, but then it would get repaired for the next showdown fight, that would be fine. But archiving it is almost certainly not the right idea. You would very rarely want to archive it. And the fact that it's discarding moods it's a positive and a negative. Moods can be very scary, but they're also in a self-inflicted wound that the monster's done to itself. You will encounter those cards in the next lap through the deck, so you might have just wanted them to stay in play. So situational how good it is. The main thing I rate this for, though, is the weapon to the left gains noisy and +1 accuracy. You can combine that with your Harpy Harp to take any weapon and get the bonus of +1 strength for each instrument in your gear grid. Sure, it doesn't become an instrument itself, but it gets to benefit from the Harpy Harp. So you can have the Singing Harp, the Harpy Harp, and then whatever weapon you really like as a 3 cards kind of buff combo to get some extra strength and accuracy onto a weapon. Again, it's best with those survivors who don't need armor in their gear grids because they've got more slots to play with. Okay, time for the spinning sword. This costs a fluted bone and a bone. It is a weapon melee sword, 2 speed, 7+ accuracy, 3 strength. Not a great attack profile. Left facing green, right facing green. Those are good affinities. Paired, and you get +2 evasion against ranged attacks for each of your spinning swords. So, another really unique ability. This means if you have them paired, then you've got +4 evasion versus ranged attacks. The only real issue at the moment is there's not a lot of monsters with ranged attacks, and Atnus at level 2 or higher, I think it is, basically ignores positive evasion, so it doesn't do anything there. So instead you're left with it working against the Crimson Crocodile's fingers, and the single best one is the Tyrant, who is almost exclusively ranged. The Tyrant is the core nemesis, like Node 1 nemesis replacement in People of the Stars. He's one of the best boys in all of Kingdom Death. He's one of my favourite characters. He does a lot of ranged attacks, and that's where the spinning swords can come into their own. It may change in the future. I would hopefully see a lot more monsters using ranged attacks, and then space like this can be explored even further. So sometimes it's really good because of the monsters you're fighting, sometimes it isn't. Oh, hang on, I think I'm not sure if it works against the Manhunter or not. The Manhunter does have some ranged attacks as well. I didn't look that up. I should have, but we can put the Manhunter on the list as well, possibly. Also, aesthetically, this is like being the baton twirler for your band, so that's kind of fun as well. Really neat little piece of design. Ultimately, the reason I'm never super excited about these is just that attack profile. I think with 7 accuracy, they could have had 4 strength or even 5 strength. I mean, you're spinning them, there's 2 blades on them, they've got potentially a lot more momentum behind them. Maybe even barbed as kind of a compensation would have been nice. Ultimately, they're at their best as a defensive tool against monsters with ranged attacks. So you pick them up early to use them, and then later on you just kind of be like, okay, well this is +4 evasion versus this particular monster, we're bringing the swords, and I'll have a different weapon to attack with if I need it, that kind of thing. So there's a place for them, even if they don't like lights out work all the time, they do have worlds in which they're viable. Then we have for a fluted bone, a whistle tooth, and a hide, the Spear of Life. This is a weapon, melee spear, two-handed. The only two-handed weapon in all of this stuff. The base stuff, not including Indomitables. It is 2 speed, 6+ accuracy, 4 strength with a left-facing green affinity. It has reach 2, like pretty much all spears. Reach, we like reach. And that left-facing green affinity, if you connect it, has an incredibly unique ability with a big pile of text. So let's read it out and see if I can get through it without stumbling, because I'm not great at reading out loud. When another survivor dies from bleeding tokens, roll 1d10. On a 7+, your dart saves them. There's a little dart pictured just here. They suffer -1 permanent evasion and remove up to 3 bleeding tokens. So this is like a real nice quality of life upgrade. The Spear of Life alone has an attack profile that is on the money. This is what I consider to be the average attack profile. And then for Node 2. And then it's got Reach 2 on top of that, which is nice. You can combine that with like all sorts of different things. And you have that 40% chance of stopping a survivor with a lot of bleed tokens from dying. This has great synergy with the Crimson Armor that likes to leverage bleed as hard as possible. Like ideally with Crimson Armor, you get yourself to as many bleeds you can, like 1 away from death, and then pop the armor ability to, boom, get all those extra armor points and be ready to rock for the rest of the fight. However, you are running the thin edge of danger, and if the monster catches you off guard, you could bleed out. This is just sitting there as a little extra bonus. It's not going to work all the time, and maybe you won't have to trigger it, but that doesn't matter because the Spear of Life is still a spear for stabbing, and we're happy with that. So, really like this. I like the design. I think it's super cool that it's like a blow pipe kind of affair. You know, somebody's about to bleed out, and you grab this, and I don't know if it like has a launching mechanism or if you would blow from the back end. Whoop. Who knows? But either way, I don't care. Super like this, like the design. And I'm always very happy to have a spear with this kind of attack profile, even if it only has a situational ability that's sometimes good. That's good enough for me. Okay, so we're here. Before I go on to the armor set, I'll just do the seed pattern. This is the Hushing Harmonium. So I'll do a video on seed patterns in the future. I'm working on it. I'll go into more detail there, but you're only allowed to craft 1 of these maximum. That's the ID number for this. Positives are official and negatives are promotional, kind of silly. You might not want to use them because they're wacky and weird. This is the era, which tells you where the resources have to come from. Not a big deal here because these two are Smogsinger resources specifically. How you can track what era all your broken lanterns come from. No, we don't care about that. You have to have a survivor fought the Smogsingers, and then they will play drums. You have to drums innovated, and they will suffer the death sphere injury as like negativity. It costs a singing tongue, a broken lantern, and a vocal cord. So that's quite rare resources for the Smogsingers, but also not highly in demand. 2 of those. Is it 2 of those? Yes, 2 of those and 1 of those. I think the only negative with this is you have to track from the very start of the campaign which survivors hunt and fight the Smogsingers. This is something that happens in a way worse sort of place with many of the other Siege pattern cards, where they have an ability that you're like, well, if I was playing this on a computer game, automated, it would track this for me, but behind the scenes, and I wouldn't have to think about it. I'd just click and be like, okay, who can innovate this, and it would highlight all of the survivors who can innovate it. In paper, we're not tracking that, so you're kind of, if you're going to be playing with Smogsingers, you maybe want to have it in the back of your mind of just putting a little like SS mark or something. No, not that actually, that's a bit, put a smog, write smog on them when they fought against the Smogsingers, make a note somewhere, just so you know who you can pick from. Awkward bookkeeping, that's all it is. The Hushing Harmonium is this beautiful little instrument. It's a seed, weapon, melee, instrument, metal, other. 1 speed, 7+ accuracy, 0 strength. You can hit things with it, but we don't really want to do that. It's got a right facing green and a down facing green. And then its main use is the Ballad of Silence, which costs 12 wounds. You spend an activation and archive 12 cards from the wound stack to perform this. All other survivors are hushed and not threats. Hushed is a keyword, an ability, that was introduced in the Gambler's Chest. It reads, hushed survivors are cloaked in silence. They ignore vibration damage, which smoke singers do, are considered deaf, and cannot encourage, roar, scream, perform audible effects, or activate noisy gear. So, you can still play the harmonium, it's not noisy. That is... Hushed becomes especially important when you're fighting the king, but this is super useful to shut off, like, vibration damage, you know? Oof, big. Essentially, this is a very specific tool for specific circumstances, which works incredibly well. It also gives us a non-noisy instrument that we could use with instrument synergy stuff like Infernal Rhythm from Echoes of Death. I want to say Echoes of Death 3. Let's see if I guessed that right or not before we move on. I hope so. I know the model. I love the model. No, it was Echoes of Death 2 has Infernal Rhythm in it. But yeah, it's an instrument that we can use that isn't noisy, so we can use instrument synergies and take advantage of that, which I always appreciate. Very, very thematic and sort of otherwise a situational tool that you'll use under certain circumstances, which is a good place for gear cards to be. If stuff is good all of the time, it means your gear grids don't really change, so I like situationally good, and otherwise you would skip on it. So, armour set. The Singing Armour is a strong contender for one of my favourite armour sets in the entire game. It's styled around the concept of the medieval bard, especially as how you'd see them in Renaissance fairs, which is well, I was going to say it's a really American thing, but it's actually not necessarily, because every summer here on Gotland we have a Renaissance medieval fair type thing, so people dress up there. But yeah, it's that kind of classic fantasy bard trope. We have this billowing, semi-slashed sleeves kind of design with a breastplate that's a bit like what's that word? A bodice or a corset was what I was thinking of. A bit like that, more like a bodice than anything else. And then you've got the singing cap, which is I love this cap. This is the muffin cap, called so because the design like a muffin. It's a Elizabethan 16th century piece of gear that was quite fashionable, that eventually became really fashionable. It got called the mob cap during the French Revolution because it was often worn by revolting peasants. And I think it even persisted as far as like the 19th century as things that was worn by members of staff, and you'll even see it occasionally today, like servants, members of staff, servants in noble places and everything. It's a really enduring hat and really silly, and I love the design of it. I love that this is producing smog, which you can see up here. It's still doing that smog thing. The armor set itself is focused around ballads, hence the set abilities. You may perform 2 ballads simultaneously. There's a bunch of ballads. The main thing is you've got to be careful when you're running 2 ballads, because even though we do get a discount here with the gloves, I'll get into it a bit more in a moment, we still need to deal enough wounds in order to get both ballads running. That means some of the monsters we're fighting need to be have a large health pool, and they can't be life monsters because you can't ballad archive life because they have no cards in the wound stack. So there's some fights which ballads just don't work in at all. There's a overt design where Atlas starts the showdown with a bunch of moods in his wound pile, so you can just strip all of those away and get a ballad running quickly. That's an intended piece of design, so there's like a benefit when doing it against level 1. There's maybe sometimes you get punished for it, but not always, so that's an interesting push and pull synergy. You play some, play a bit of funky music, and Atnos is immediately forgets to be stroppy. Kind of nice. Ultimately, it is which ballads you pick that matter, because if you're looking to play the Ballad of Silence, even with a full armor set, that's 11 wounds still that you need to get through before you can do this. That's a fairly big number when you think of how large monster decks get. So, yeah, that's sort of the thing you have to work out and decide the pairings of. Generally, like, around Savage and Perfection are fairly easy to do. These ones down here, some of them are not too expensive either. This one is, but this is 5, 6, and 7, so you can usually afford it. But you'll want a game plan. You're like, what are my ballads? Which one do I do first, etc. Beyond that, let's get into the individual pieces. So we first of all have the Singing Cap. Every piece is armor set flesh with 3 armor points base plus 1 extra from the set bonus, so 4 armor points. I won't go through it on any of the others, but let's talk about that right now. Obviously the flesh keyword doesn't do anything yet, but it's there, so potentially outfits in the future. 3 armor points going to 4 is bang on the money what I expect to get from this many resources. 10 resources, I want 20 armor points. That's 2 armor points per resource. That means it's online with Rawhide armor, which is 10 armor points for 5 resources. So this is perfectly well priced. In fact, this is the single node 2 armor set that has the right pricing for what it does, and I cannot be happier about that. Silk armor has the problem with a hat needing you to kill a level 3 Spediculus, which is bonkers for like when you'd be unlocking, when you'd want a full silk armor set. Screaming armor got nerfed down to a terrible amount of armor points, 15, and needs to be pushed upwards to around at least 18 before I think it's reasonable. And the Flower Knight doesn't have any armor at the moment, so we don't have to worry about that. So this is my baseline standard. I will be comparing all future Node 2 armor sets to this armor set, because I think this is the first Node 2 armor set we've had that is on the money where it should be for the resource costs, time investment, and potential difficulty. So let's get on to the Singing Cap's affinities and ability in particular. This is the best piece of armor in the entire set. It's so good that I'm probably going to be talking about it again when I do a video on mixed sets in the future, which is where you combine bits and pieces from different sets to make something that's hopefully better than the sum of its parts. It's got an up facing green and a down facing blue, and if you puzzle connect those, which as we can see on the gear grid is relatively easy to do, we can do it every time if we want to, which we do. The ability is when you're attacked and suffer more than 1 hit, ignore 1 hit. So again, won't work if the monster has ways of ignoring ignore, like Atnos does at higher levels, but otherwise an incredible ability because it is something you can stack with block, deflect, dodge. The set does a great job at running as a frontline tank once you have it built, and when you get further on in the campaign, having this ability to ignore hits is still useful for damage dealers, which Singing Armor does that similar trick to Crimson Armor in that it can be tanky to start with, and then as it becomes more obsolete and you need a harder armor set on the front line, these sort of fall off to the damage dealers and still do their job. This is a phenomenal ability. I think it's close. I try and think about whether I class this as the best headpiece in the game or not, like for time crafted. It's close. The Gormant Mask is still probably better, but the Screaming Horns are in there. Like maybe it's like Singing Cap, Gormant Mask, Screaming Horns, outside of Rawhide, which is so far ahead of everything else we might as well worry about it, because the Rawhide Headband is an ability we need on items, not on a piece of armor, so we can stop using Rawhide all campaigns in some campaigns. Yeah. So just a great thing. There's something fairly simple and straightforward but very powerful. I think it's bang on the money what it should be doing. Next up we have the Singing... Oh yeah. And it costs a gaseous belly and an organ. If we me just hide that, pull this up. Okay, singing gloves. Delicate hand, makes sense, and an organ. And this is what I was talking about with those kind of pseudo-slashed sleeves, where you've got a different colour stitched in between, although this is more of kind of just alternating bands of colour. Left facing green, right facing blue. It doesn't need them itself. Reduce the cost to perform your ballads by 1. Very simple. You've got 2 ballads. Now they both cost 1 less each. That makes it easier to activate 2 ballads. Just think about which ones you want to run. So I've talked enough about that. I won't go to any further. Then we got the singing breastplate. This has our it's got an up facing blue and a right facing red, and this is our monster movement ability. It's called Hit Song. Again, props, brilliant, great choice, love it, absolutely perfect name. Spend your activation and your movement, your knight and your bolt, to full move forward and attack. If you moved at least 4 spaces, first time you wound during this attack, you encourage all survivors. Obviously, survivors that can't be encouraged won't work on, but it will work on standing survivors, which normally you can't do with encourages. So this gives you the ability to take stuff that triggers off on encourages and provides other benefits, and then use it repeatedly. Moving 4 spaces, a little awkward. We have the singing boots to help with that. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But yeah, it's one of those ones that it works better with reach weapons because of how these limit the way you can move. You're full moving forwards and then making your attack. So if you have reach, you can hit an extra 4 spaces. Well, technically 3. No, more than 3. You can hit 12 spaces instead of 4, but you've moved through one of them, so it's 11 spaces. Without doing the diagram on the map, I've talked about reach in the past. You know how it works. Reach good, reach great, reach really good with these kind of things. So again, unique, fun, thematically absolute slam dunk. Love it. Singing pantaloons, they provide protection. The only thing really to note here is they're kind of chaps. They're like big blooming chaps. They go over the top of what seems to be a set of tights underneath, which isn't part of any of the gear cards, but we can see them here. Little tights, and yeah, short chaps. And then finally we have the singing boots. They've got an up facing green and a left facing blue. If you connect the green and have a blue anywhere on your gear grid, then at the end of your act, you may move up to 3 spaces away from the monster. So this can help you set up the hit song, which needs you to move 4 spaces. Because you can move back 3, and then whoever's tanking could step back 1 space or so and get the monster to come to them and provide that distance for you. So this gives you some positioning, and it's not like directly away. It's as long as you're moving away, you can kind of wiggle a little bit. It also, when used by a tank, lets you back up and have a bit of distance from the monster, which may let you cancel its attack by dashing, a dash cancel. So normally if you're standing in front of the monster and it's got 6 movement, then if you tried to dash when it targeted you, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and it'll catch up to you. But now if you're 1, 2, 3 away when it starts, if it targets you and you dash your 5, you're 8 spaces away and it can only move 6 and has to come after you, and it fails to connect, thereby wasting its entire attack. That's strong. You do this with Gorman armor as well, but this is just a better armor set for the platform of managing it, and it doesn't need a shield. So that is a really good ability, but you have to work for it. You have to be smart with your positioning and making sure the monster's targeting the right target in order to pay off, but you can use it defensively or you can use it offensively. That's great. Okay, we're nearly there. I'm not very well today, so this has been a bit of a rigmarole, an ordeal. We've got these left to go through. We saved the best for last. The Indomitables. First of all, Milky Milk Tooth, which always makes me think of Marky Mark, which is Mark Wahlberg's name before his singing name, wasn't it? But Milky Milk Tooth. And you can archive this to remove Shattered Jaw. Kind of actually thematically really neat, because there's a lot of singing kind of elements to this, playing music, and so still being able to fix your jaw and start singing, that's kind of a nice thing. But the main This mostly exists to sort of reduce the better draws. It kind of dilutes the deck a little bit, but it does give you a perfect bone. So there are benefits to it. Crystallized Song, Indomitable Perfect Hide, the physical form of a melody, gives us the sax. I've said it before in this video, again, 10 out of 10 no notes for the name. Saxophone, sax, axe, sax. This is the best named axe since X-Max in Kingdom Death. Love it. Smack with a sax. This is my favourite of all of the weapons in here because it just has the most like presence and an aura, and just yes, this is the weapon you want to be rocking up to the showdown with. You get to play some jazz, some funky blues, a big old solo, and then you smack the monster with an axe. It's everything I want. It costs the Crystalline Song, 2 bone and an organ. It is a weapon melee axe, bone, metal instrument, noisy. Axe is a solid weapon type, upper middle of the pack. 2 speed, 7 plus accuracy, 8 strength. Accuracy is of course a little bit of a shame, but that strength is great for a weapon that comes from a level 3 node 2 monster. It's got left facing red, if I didn't mention that already. Slight flavour fail, it should be a left facing blue, because this thing plays the Ballad of the Blues. So this is activate and archive 8 cards from the wound stack. The monster and all survivors shed a tear, and you archive all moods in play. So this is just the better version of what we were talking about earlier. Just really good. It's just great because it's not only getting rid of those moods, but it's ensuring they don't come back, and it's archiving them, which will feed towards you activating your other ballad if you're running 2 ballads. I have, like, the sax was one of the weapons I put on my Smog Singers, Singer Armor survivors, because I was like, this is really cool. I love the design, I love the whole concept. It's sweet as heck. So I don't think it's the best, but it's the one I want to play with the most. Next up, we've got the Foreskin Hood, which shrieks when stretched, and it makes the Discordian, which makes sense. Shriek, stretch, that's kind of the noise of a accordion. It's crafted with a foreskin, hood, hide, and 2 bone. Before we get into the weapon, little for posterity history is, before the Gambler's Chest landed, Team Death ran a little kind of promotional event where they had a modified Spediculus called I think it's the Silent Mother, that's what I want to say. And once it was beaten, they revealed the Discordian to us all. That was kind of like a nice little insight, and had us speculating and wondering if it was going to be coming Campaigns of Death and it was related to the Spediculus or not. It wasn't. Here it is. But yeah, it's the Weird Al Yankovic coded Discordian. Weapon melee, sword, metal, instrument, noisy, 2 speed, 6 plus accuracy, 3 strength, a little low, but left facing green, right facing red affinities, doesn't need them. It has unwieldy, which means ones will hurt you, and sharp, so actually means it's got 5.5 more strength on average than you'd think. Now, if you're like, I can't roll 5.5 on a dice, the reason you need to say 5.5 is you're rolling the sharp dice plus the wounding dice, so that means you're actually getting an average roll of 11 there. So basically, on average, the Discordian wounds 11 toughness with an average roll with no other bonuses. So that's 2d10, average rolls at 11. It's got the Ballad of Sword Polka for its activated ability, which is 5 cards from the wound stack. All survivor swords gain finesse and deflect 1. If they already have deflect, increase it by 1. So, really good. Really good ability. It's giving itself deflect 1 and finesse. Finesse has some use with, again, kind of squire-like builds, or your own where you use the polishing lantern on finesse weapons. That's from the blacksmith. Adding deflect to swords is great. Deflect's an amazing ability because you can just activate it and then leave it until you get hit. You don't have to set it up every turn. You just set it up until it's used and then reset it. Increasing deflect as well, very strong. There's some very, very strong deflect related stuff you can do with Verminism, for example. Deflect is just incredibly good. The negative is you need to be running a lot of swords, but you might be playing, I don't know, the Seven Swordsman from the back of the original core rulebook, or you might just be rocking a bunch of swords because swords have the highest variety of styles and they often cross over with other weapons. You know, you get like sword something else, you get sword club, that's one that sometimes happens. So yeah, it's a sweet as heck weapon and really enjoyable to use. My only disappointment is it doesn't have reach. It feels like it should have reach. I mean, it's based on an accordion. You should be able to swing it and it stretches out. I'd have put reach 3 on it. Just why not go crazy? But still great. The belly steel, Indomitable Perfect Iron Organ, which makes a booming sound when beaten, gives you the Drum of Hope. This requires the belly steel, a bone, and any other perfect resource, so that's part of the reason the Milky Milk Tooth isn't the worst to have. You can just spend spare perfects to get this. The Drum of Hope is a weapon melee club, axe, bone, instrument, noisy, with up, right, and down facing reds. It doesn't need any of those affinities itself. Having 2 weapon types is always good. Club and axe is a solid and unusual pairing. I like how those work together. They're not like directly synergist, but they kind of cover each other under certain other things, so it works nicely together in ways that you wouldn't expect. Its attack profile is 1 speed, 6+ accuracy, 9 strength, and it's got slow, so it's, unless you're frenzied or similar, are always going to be swinging at 1. Its Ballad is a really cool one. Like a lot of these, it's the Ballad of Smash. Or, you know, maybe, hopefully I can ruin this forever for you and call it the Ballad of Smash Mouth, so you can just think of, hey, now I'm an all-star whenever you're playing with this. You activate it, you archive 6 cards from wound stats to perform it. All wounds reactions become failure reactions. End this Ballad at the end of a round if you fail to hit with this weapon. So, strong ability. Now you're only worrying about reactions that are reflex, or when you wound, which means you're always making progress even if the monster is hitting you back. You don't have to worry about failing. You have to keep hitting with this. You've got to keep the beat going. Bang, 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 bang. I love it. I love it. Like, the thematics, just great. This is a sweet as heck weapon. I think it's really cool. I like the design of it as well. Immensely fun. And it's a delight to use it. Like, just a joy. Obviously, you want some good extra accuracy if you're using this. You probably want to be attacking for the blind spot as well to sort of maximise the chances of keeping it rolling. But you just need to hit. You don't need to wound. You can always surge to try and hit again. So that means you've only got a 25% chance because the first hit succeeds, then that's 50%, and then if you miss, you can surge again for another 50%, so it's 50% of 50%, which is 25, which is 75% accuracy, boom-ish, whatever. Anyway, great stuff, love it, really do love it. I want to play with this again now I'm looking at it. It's so fun that you have to keep the beat going, honestly. Okay, last of all, we have the Fused Feet. I'll talk more about this in length in the Smog Singers video a bit later, but the Smog Singers have legs that are fused together as part of their references of being a mermaid. And it describes here a set of cursed appendages. Again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but I will really thoroughly explore that in the Smog Singers Dark Bestiary entry because it's actually really cool lore. But yeah, we take the legs and we make the Cursed Hammer, so, you know, cursed appendage, cursed hammer. It uses the Fused Feet, 1 bone and 2 organ. It is a weapon melee, grand club, instrument, heavy, noisy. So obviously rarely do we see heavy on any of these particular cards, but it has it here. Grand club is a nice combination. Its attack profile is 2 speed, 7+ accuracy, 12 strength, like a beefy attack profile. It's got an up facing blue, that you do want the puzzle connect. Its base or ability is when you wound with this, gain -1 strength token. If you have the blue connected and another blue anywhere on a gear grid, you get access to the Ballad of Inversion, which is activate and archive 7 cards from the wound stack. You flip all of your negative attribute tokens. So the concept with the Curse Hammer is each time you wound, the weapon becomes a bit weaker. Well, you become weaker. So boom, 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 boom. And then, at a certain point, you play the Ballad, and you flip them all, and they become positive while you have the Ballad playing. So then you can massively increase your strength. So it's one of the quite nicely sort of skill-orientated things where you've got to judge the best moment to play the Ballad. Obviously, you need to have dealt at least 6 wounds if you're running this with singing armor. That at minimum is going to be -6, so it's down to 6 strength weapon at that point. But if you can push it further, you can get an even larger benefit. It's got an interesting kind of, almost a rally sort of feel, where things are getting bad, you're flagging, and then boom, the Curse Hammer kicks in, and you're back on top. And it will flip other negative attribute tokens, so if you have ways of giving yourself other negative attribute tokens, or the monster's doing it to you, that adds even more benefit to this. So there's a lot of space for playing around. It's not my favourite. My favourite is the Saxe, closely followed by the Drum of Hope, but I do think it's incredibly solid and interesting to use, and can be the best of the bunch with the right kind of monsters you're fighting against. So, that's it. That's instruments, that's music, that's my noisy rant. Overall, Harvester aside, it was really delightful to talk about this, and in fact it was just freeing to be able to be like, I'm just going to ignore noisy and talk about the ways you can use these for positives, because it's such an exciting and fun and thematic space to explore. So ultimately, I think the best general use for the crafting stuff in this location is the armor set. The armor set really helps you take that step from level 1 monsters to level 2 monsters, and the Smog Singers themselves are very good as your first level 2 monster in a campaign, because they're quite soft. Very rarely do they deliver a severe threat. They do take a fair bit to cut through. They're not a pushover, but they're kind of softer than some of the other Node 1 and Node 2 level 2s. So there's a nice progression beat for this. There's very few pieces of gear in here I don't like. I think maybe I don't like this ability on the Singing Harp. That's kind of it really. Everything else I think is really sweet. I don't want this armor set to ever get changed in any way, shape or form. Team Death, please just bring other armor sets up to match this, like, or be close to it. This is what I want from my Node 2 armor sets. This makes me happy. This has pieces I can pull off to join with other bits and create like mixed sets. So yeah, that's it. Chorusseum. Be back next time with the Smog Singers in full. Got a lot to talk about there. Going to talk about sirens and mermaids and sea lions and walruses, which is all great, and we get to talk about the big old singing whale as well, which is going to be exciting, because that whale is a fun one. So yeah, that's it. I've been Fan. This has been the Chorusseum. Like, comment, subscribe, blah blah blah. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you to my patrons, pillar patrons and archivists and zoologists in particular, who support these videos expressly. I really appreciate you guys, and thank you for listening, and happy hunting.